Amina's village lay stretched beneath the golden haze of the late afternoon sun. Dust swirled along the narrow paths, kicked up by the worn sandals of children running home from the fields. The air smelled faintly of burnt yam and cassava, mingled with the soft scent of the earth after a morning sprinkle of rain. To an outsider, it might have seemed like just another small village in Nigeria. But to Amina, it was home, rough, imperfect, yet hers in every heartbeat and memory. Her parents stood at the edge of the compound, their hands trembling as they adjusted the small suitcase she carried. Her father's eyes were soft but heavy, lined with the exhaustion of years spent trying to make ends meet. Her mother's voice was quieter than usual, carrying both hope and sorrow. "Amina," her mother said, her fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from Amina's forehead. "Your auntie, she can give you a better life. You'll go to school, you'll have clothes, meals, you'll be safe, my child." Amina nodded, though her chest tightened. "Mama, will I see you again?" Her voice cracked. Her little brother tugged at her skirt, tears streaming down his cheeks. Her mother held her close, whispering into her ear, "You'll come back, I promise. You'll be okay." Her father crouched down, hugging her tightly. "You are going to a better place," he said. "Be strong. Remember who you are." Amina turned one last time toward the clay walls of her house, toward the small patch of garden her mother tended, toward the laughter and chaos of her siblings. She held onto it as tightly as she could, though her small hands could barely grasp the enormity of leaving it all behind. The bus ride to Lagos was a blur of roads, dust, and the occasional honk of passing vehicles. Amina pressed her hand against the window, staring at the village shrinking behind her. With every mile, the weight of her parents' hopes pressed harder on her shoulders. Somewhere deep inside, she clung to a small, stubborn flicker of hope that the city could be what her parents promised, that life in her auntie's house would finally be better. Lagos was a different world entirely. The sun bounced off shiny cars, tall buildings stretched like concrete giants toward the clouds, and motorcycles weaved dangerously through traffic, honking incessantly. Street vendors shouted over the roar of the city, hawking plantain, roasted corn, and sachets of cold water. The smell of fried akara and suya mingled with exhaust fumes in the afternoon air. It was vibrant, loud, overwhelming. When the bus finally reached the gates of her auntie's mansion, Amina felt as though she had stepped into a dream she was not sure she deserved. White walls gleamed, the driveway was polished, and the garden, manicured, lush, seemed more like a painting than real life. Her auntie greeted her with an embrace, smiling as if nothing could go wrong. "Amina, my darling niece, welcome to your new home," she said, her voice bright, cheerful. Her uncle, a tall man in a crisp suit, nodded politely but said little. Her cousins, 2 children around her age, peeked from behind a doorway, curious but cautious. Amina could only offer a small smile, still not sure how to navigate this new world. The mansion was vast. Her room was spacious, with a bed too soft, curtains too bright, and a small desk that looked like it belonged in a school magazine. For the first time in her life, she felt hope. Maybe this was what her parents promised. Maybe life here would finally be easier. At first, it seemed so. Her auntie cooked meals for her, bought her clothes, and even helped her unpack. She smiled and whispered, "Now, you will have a good life, Amina." For a few days, the weight of her journey lifted, and Amina dared to believe. The first week ended, and something shifted. It started quietly. Amina stood in the kitchen one morning, holding a plate with both hands, waiting for instructions. Her auntie glanced at it, frowned, and pushed it back toward her. "Is this how you people do things in that village?" she said, her voice sharp but controlled. Amina froze. "I'm sorry, Ma." Her auntie clicked her tongue and walked away. That day, nothing else happened, but something had begun. The next morning, Amina was shaken awake before dawn. "Get up," her auntie said, standing over her. Do you think food cooks itself? Sleep still clung to Amina's eyes as she stumbled to her feet. Outside, the sky was dark, Lagos quiet in that rare moment before chaos. She swept, mopped, washed plates. By the time the house stirred awake, her back already ached. At breakfast, she stood by the wall. Her cousins sat, ate, talked. Amina waited. When she reached for a piece of bread after they finished, her auntie slapped her hand away. "Did I say you should eat?" She shook her head. "No, ma." "Then go and wash those plates." Days passed. Like this, each day heavier than the last. If the floor was wet, she was shouted at. If it was dry, she was accused of doing nothing. If she moved too slowly, she was lazy. If she moved too fast, she was careless. One afternoon, she accidentally spilled water while mopping. Her auntie turned sharply. "What is wrong with you?" "I'll clean it, ma. I'm sorry." Before Amina could bend down, a slap landed across her face. Not hard enough to draw blood, hard enough to warn her. "Sorry doesn't clean floors," her auntie said. That night, Amina lay awake staring at the ceiling, her cheek burning. She pressed her lips together so her sobs wouldn't escape. "God," she whispered into the darkness, "please." Weeks went by. Amina learned to listen for footsteps, to read moods, to disappear when her auntie's voice rose. Still, it wasn't enough. Sundays, she was sent to follow her auntie to the market. She carried bags heavier than her body, stood outside shops while dresses were lifted and admired. "This one will look good on Monisola," her auntie would say. Amina watched silently. Nothing was ever for her. Morning schools were the hardest. She watched her cousins button uniforms, complain about homework, rush out the door. She stood at the gate, holding a broom. One morning, she asked softly, "Ma, when will I go to school?" Her auntie didn't even look at her. "School?" She laughed. "You? Finish your work first." The work never finished. Then came the day the cook didn't show up. It was already late morning. Hunger pressed against her ribs. Her auntie stormed into the kitchen. "Why is there no food?" "The cook hasn't come, ma." Her auntie turned slowly. So I thought..." "Don't think, cook." Amina nodded quickly. Her hands trembled as she lit the stove. She chopped onions, eyes burning, stirred the pot the way she remembered from home. Fear made her movements clumsy. She checked the pot, stepped away, checked again. The smell came suddenly. Burnt. Her heart dropped. She turned just as her auntie walked in. The pot was lifted, sniffed. "What is this?" I'm sorry, ma. I'll start again." The blow came faster than thought. Something hard, sharp, pain exploded across her head. She cried out once before collapsing to the floor. Blood spilled, warm and terrifying. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. Her auntie stood over her, breathing hard. "Useless child." Moments later, panic replaced anger. Amina was dragged into the car. At the hospital, her auntie spoke calmly. She fell. Amina said nothing. She healed, but the house did not. After that, beatings became normal. Sometimes with words, sometimes without. She was hit for burning food, hit for not burning food, hit because her auntie was angry at something else. She learned to accept pain without sound. Her body carried bruises her mouth never mentioned. Days, weeks, months. Amina shrank, not in size, but in presence. She walked carefully, spoke rarely, dreamed quietly. Yet somewhere inside her, beneath the fear and hunger and silence, something stayed alive. A stubborn will, a quiet faith, a belief that this could not be the end. And every night, before sleep claimed her aching body, she whispered again, "God, don't forget me." By the time Amina realized it, she had stopped expecting things to get better. She still woke before dawn, still worked until her body felt hollow, still whispered prayers into the dark. But hope, the kind that waits, had gone quiet. What remained was clarity. Life in the city was not shaping her, it was shrinking her. One afternoon, as she stood in the courtyard watching the gate swing open and shut, something settled inside her. She didn't belong here. not because she was weak, but because this place had no room for her breath. When her auntie spoke that evening, complaining, correcting, dismissing, Amina listened without trembling. Then she spoke. "Ma," she said steady but soft, "I want to go home." Her auntie paused. "Home?" she repeated, amused. "You came here for a better life." Amina nodded. "I know." She lowered her eyes, not in fear this time, but in respect. "But this life is not good for me." The words were simple. They did not accuse. They did not beg. They were true. There was no argument, just a sharp sigh, a shake of the head. "Do what you want," her auntie said, already turning away. And just like that, it was decided. Amina packed quietly. Her few clothes, her worn slippers, nothing else. The house felt strange, smaller, emptier, as she stepped outside. The city moved around her, loud and fast, but she felt light. For the first time in months, she was not leaving herself behind. The journey back to the village was long. As the buildings thinned and the roads grew familiar, Amina rested her head against the window. She thought of her parents, their faces, their voices. She didn't know what waited for her, but she knew where she belonged. When she arrived, her mother held her tightly. Her father said nothing, only nodded, eyes heavy with understanding. That night, Amina slept deeply. Not because life was suddenly easy, but because she was safe. The city had promised her a future, but it was home that gave her back her soul. And as she closed her eyes, Amina whispered one last prayer, not for strength, but for peace.